And we are back. Welcome to Another World Audiobooks. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you to everyone who is sharing the show and helping us grow. I so appreciate it. Thank you to our patrons who are on Patreon there. If you want to sign up to become a patron, I recommend going to anotherworldaudiobooks.com. If you scroll down there a little bit, you'll see a couple different options. And one of those is to become a citizen. So it's kind of the running joke here is another world. We're in another world. You can become a citizen of another world. So go check that out. I really appreciate every single patron who signed up. And like I've mentioned in the last couple episodes, once we get to 12 citizens signed up as patrons on Patreon, we will stop forever of splitting these episodes of the chapters up into multiple episodes. I hate doing that, but in order to get to the point where we don't have to do that, I need your help. So if you feel so moved, go over to Patreon and become a patron. Once we get up to 12 patrons, we will stop doing this forever and ever. And then I'd like to even continue on with some milestones as far as patrons that we can get on the Patreon, and then be able to actually, bring you multiple chapters per episode. Or I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but rest assured, that is my goal, and that's what I want to do. And I'm so grateful for everyone who's helping me do that. So yeah, let's get into it. Without further ado, I give you the first part of Chapter 3 of Arsene Lupin versus Herlock Sholmes. Chapter 3. Herlock Sholmes opens hostilities.
What does Monsieur wish?
Anything, replied Arsene Lupin, like a man who never worries over the details of a meal. Anything you like, but no meat or alcohol. The waiter walked away disdainfully. What, still a vegetarian? I exclaimed. More so than ever, replied Lupin. Through taste, faith, or habit? Hygiene. And you never fall from grace? Oh, yes, when I am dining out, and wish to avoid being considered eccentric. We were dining near the Northern Railway Station, in a little restaurant to which Arsene Lupin had invited me. Frequently, he would send me a telegram asking me to meet him in some obscure restaurant, where we could enjoy a quiet dinner, well served, and which was always made interesting to me by his recital of some startling adventure theretofore unknown to me. On that particular evening, he appeared to be in a more lively mood than usual. He laughed and joked with careless animation, and with that delicate sarcasm that was habitual with him, a light and spontaneous sarcasm that was quite free from any tinge of malice. It was a pleasure to find him in that jovial mood, and I could not resist a desire to tell him so. Ah, yes, he exclaimed. There are days in which I find life as bright and gay as a spring morning. Then life seems to be an infinite treasure which I can never exhaust, and yet, God knows, I lead a careless existence. Too much so, perhaps. But I tell you, the treasure is infinite. I can spend it with a lavish hand. I can cast my youth and strength to the four winds of heaven, and it is replaced by a still younger and greater force. Besides, my life is so pleasant. If I wished to do so, I might become, what shall I say, an orator, a manufacturer, a politician. But I assure you, I shall never have such a desire. Arsene Lupin I am. Arsene Lupin I shall remain. I have made a vain search in history to find a career comparable to mine, a life better filled and more intense. Napoleon? Yes, perhaps, but Napoleon, toward the close of his career, when all Europe was trying to crush him, asked himself on the eve of each battle if it would not be his last. Was he serious, or was he joking? He became more animated as he proceeded. That is everything, do you understand? The danger, the continuous feeling of danger. To breathe it in as you breathe the air, to scent it in every breath of the wind, to detect it in every unusual sound, and in the midst of the tempest, to remain calm, and not to stumble. Otherwise you are lost. There is only one sensation equal to it, that of the chauffeur in an automobile race. But that race lasts only a few hours. My race continues until death. What a fantasy, I exclaimed. And you wish me to believe that you have no particular motive for your adoption of that exciting life. Come, he said with a smile. You are a clever psychologist. Work it out for yourself. He poured himself a glass of water, drank it, and said, Did you read Luton today? No. Herlock Sholmes crossed the channel this afternoon, and arrived in Paris about 6 o'clock. The deuce! What is he coming for? A little journey he has undertaken, at the request of the Count and Countess of Crozon, Monsieur Gerbois, and the nephew of Baron d'Autrec. They met him at the Northern Railway Station, took him to meet Ganimard, and at this moment the 6 of them are holding a consultation. Despite a strong temptation to do so, I had never ventured to question Arsene Lupin concerning any action of his private life, unless he had first mentioned the subject to me. Up to that moment, his name had not been mentioned, at least officially, in connection with the Blue Diamond. Consequently, I consumed my curiosity and patience. He continued. There is also in Luton an interview with my old friend Ganimard, according to whom a certain blonde lady, whom should be my friend, must have murdered the Baron d'Autrec and tried to rob Madame de Crozon of her famous ring. And what do you think? He accuses me of being the instigator of those crimes. I could not suppress a slight shudder. Was this true? Must I believe that his career of theft, his mode of existence, the logical result of such a life, had drawn that man into more serious crimes, including murder? I looked at him. He was so calm, and his eyes had such a frank expression. I observed his hands. They had been formed from a model of exceeding delicacy, long and slender, inoffensive, truly, and the hands of an artist. Ganimard has pipe dreams, I said. No, protested Lupin. Ganimard has some cleverness, and at times almost inspiration. Inspiration? Yes, for instance, that interview is a masterstroke. In the first place, he announces the coming of his English rival in order to put me on my guard and make his task more difficult. In the second place, he indicates the exact point to which he has conducted the affair in order that Sholmes will not get credit for the work already done by Ganimard. That is good warfare. Whatever it may be, you have 2 adversaries to deal with, and such adversaries. Oh, one of them doesn't count. And the other? Sholmes? Oh, I confess he is a worthy foe, and that explains my present good humour. In the first place, it is a question of self-esteem. I am pleased to know that they consider me a subject worthy of the attention of the celebrated English detective. In the next place, just imagine the pleasure a man such as I must experience in the thought of a duel with Herlock Sholmes. But I shall be obliged to strain every muscle. He is a clever fellow, and will contest every inch of the ground. Then you consider him a strong opponent? I do. As a detective, I believe he has never had an equal. But I have one advantage over him. He is making the attack, and I am simply defending myself. My role is the easier one. Besides, I am familiar with his method of warfare, and he does not know mine. I am prepared to show him a few new tricks that will give him something to think about. He tapped the table with his fingers as he uttered the following sentences with an air of keen delight. Arsene Lupin against Herlock Sholmes. France against England. Trafalgar will be revenged at last. The rascal! He doesn't suspect that I am prepared, and a Lupin warned. He stopped suddenly, seized with a fit of coughing, and hid his face in his napkin, as if something had stuck in his throat. A bit of bread? I inquired. Drink some water. No, it isn't that, he replied in a stifled voice. Then what is it? The want of air. Do you wish a window opened? No, I shall go out. Give me my hat and overcoat quick. I must go. What's the matter? The 2 gentlemen who came in just now. Look at the taller one. Now, when we go out, keep to my left so he will not see me. The one who is sitting behind you? Yes, I will explain it to you outside. Who is it? Herlock Sholmes. He made a desperate effort to control himself, as if he were ashamed of his emotion, replaced his napkin, drank a glass of water, and quite recovered, said to me smiling, It is strange, Anne. It is strange, that I should be affected so easily, but that unexpected sight... What have you to fear, since no one can recognize you, on account of your many transformations? Every time I see you, it seems to me your face has changed. It's not at all familiar. I don't know why. But he would recognize me, said Lupin. He has seen me only once, but at that time he made a mental photograph of me. Not of my external appearance, but my very soul. Not what I appear to be, but just what I am. Do you understand? And then, I did not expect to meet him here. Such a strange encounter, in this little restaurant. Well, shall we go out? No, not now, said Lupin. What are you going to do? The better way is to act frankly, to have confidence in him, trust him. You will not speak to him. Why not? It will be to my advantage to do so, and find out what he knows and, perhaps, what he thinks. At present I have the feeling that his gaze is on my neck and shoulders, and that he is trying to remember where he has seen them before. He reflected a moment. I observed a malicious smile at the corner of his mouth. Then, obedient, I think, to a whim of his impulsive nature, and not to the necessities of the situation, he arose, turned around, and with a bow and a joyous air, he said, "By what lucky chance! I am delighted to see you. Permit me to introduce a friend of mine." For a moment, the Englishman was disconcerted. Then he made a movement as if he would seize Arsene Lupin. The latter shook his head and said, "That would not be fair. Besides, the movement would be an awkward one and quite useless." The Englishman looked about him, as if in search of assistance. "No use," said Lupin. "Besides, are you quite sure you can place your hand on me? Come now, show me that you are a real Englishman and therefore a good sport." This advice seemed to commend itself to the detective, for he partially rose and said very formally, "Monsieur Wilson, my friend and assistant, Monsieur Arsene Lupin." Wilson's amazement evoked a laugh. With bulging eyes and gaping mouth, he looked from one to the other, as if unable to comprehend the situation. Herlock Sholmes laughed and said, "Wilson, you should conceal your astonishment at an incident which is one of the most natural in the world." "Why do you not arrest him?" stammered Wilson. "Have you not observed, Wilson, that the gentleman is between me and the door, and only a few steps from the door? By the time I could move my little finger, he would be outside." "Don't let that make any difference," said Lupin, who now walked around the table and seated himself so that the Englishman was between him and the door, thus placing himself at the mercy of the foreigner. Wilson looked at Sholmes to find out if he had the right to admire this act of wanton courage. The Englishman's face was impenetrable, but a moment later he called, "Waiter?" When the waiter came, he ordered soda, beer, and whiskey. The treaty of peace was signed, until further orders. In a few moments, the four men were conversing in an apparently friendly manner. Herlock Sholmes is a man such as you might meet every day in the business world. He is about 50 years of age, and looks as if he might have passed his life in an office, adding up columns of dull figures, or writing out formal statements of business accounts. There was nothing to distinguish him from the average citizen of London, except the appearance of his eyes, his terribly keen and penetrating eyes. But then, he is Herlock Sholmes, which means that he is a wonderful combination of intuition, observation, clairvoyance, and ingenuity. One could readily believe that nature had been pleased to take the two most extraordinary detectives that the imagination of man has hitherto conceived, the Dupin of Edgar Allan Poe, and the Lecoq of Émile Gaboriau, and out of that material constructed a new detective, more extraordinary and supernatural than either of them. And when a person reads the history of his exploits, which have made him famous throughout the entire world, he asks himself whether Herlock Sholmes is not a mythical personage, a fictitious hero born in the brain of a great novelist, Conan Doyle, for instance. When Arsene Lupin questioned him in regarding to the length of his sojourn in France, he turned the conversation into its proper channel by saying, "That depends on you, monsieur." "Oh!" exclaimed Lupin, laughing. "If it depends on me, you can return to England tonight." "That is a little too soon, but I expect to return in the course of 8 or 9 days, 10 at the outside." "Are you in such a hurry?" "I have many cases to attend to, such as the robbery of the Anglo-Chinese bank, the abduction of Lady Eccleston, but don't you think, Monsieur Lupin, that I can finish my business in Paris within a week?" Certainly, if you confine your efforts to the case of the blue diamond. It is, moreover, the length of time that I require to make preparations for my safety, in case the solution of that affair should give you certain dangerous advantages over me. And yet, said the Englishman, I expect to close the business in 8 or 10 days. And arrest me on the 11th, perhaps? No, the 10th is my limit. Lupin shook his head thoughtfully as he said, That will be difficult, very difficult. Difficult, perhaps, but possible, therefore certain. Absolutely certain, said Wilson, as if he had clearly worked out the long series of operations which would conduct his collaborator to the desired result. Of course, said Sherlock Holmes, I do not hold all of the trump cards, as these cases are already several months old, and I lack certain information and clues upon which I am accustomed to base my investigations. Such as spots of mud and cigarette ashes, said Wilson with an air of importance. In addition to the remarkable conclusions formed by Monsieur Ganimard, I have obtained all the articles written on the subject, and have formed a few deductions of my own. Some ideas which were suggested to us by analysis or hypothesis, added Wilson sententiously. I wish to inquire, said Arsene Lupin, in that deferential tone which he employed in speaking to Sholmes. Would I be indiscreet if I were to ask you what opinion you have formed about the case? Really, it was a most exciting situation to see these two men facing each other across the table, engaged in an earnest discussion, as if they were obliged to solve some abstruse problem or come to an agreement upon some controverted fact. Wilson was in the seventh heaven of delight. Herlock Sholmes filled his pipe slowly, lighted it, and said, This affair is much simpler than it appeared to be at first sight. Much simpler, said Wilson as a faithful echo. I say this affair, for in my opinion there is only one, said Sholmes. The death of the Baron d'Autrec, the story of the ring, and let us not forget the mystery of lottery ticket number 514, are only different phases of what one might call the mystery of the blonde lady. Now, according to my view, it is simply a question of discovering the bond that unites those 3 episodes in the same story. The fact that proves the unity of the 3 events. Ganimard, whose judgment is rather superficial, finds that unity in the faculty of disappearance, that is, in the power of coming and going unseen and unheard. That theory does not satisfy me. Well, what is your idea? Asked Lupin. In my opinion, said Sholmes, the characteristic feature of the 3 episodes is your design and purpose of leading the affair into a certain channel previously chosen by you. It is, on your part, more than a plan. It is a necessity, an indispensable condition of success. Can you furnish any details of your theory? Certainly. For example, from the beginning of your conflict with Monsieur Gerbois, is it not evident that the apartment of Monsieur Detinon is the place selected by you, the inevitable spot where all the parties must meet? In your opinion, it was the only safe place, and you arranged a rendezvous there publicly, one might say, for the blonde lady and Mademoiselle Gerbois. The professor's daughter, added Wilson. Now, let us consider the case of the blue diamond. Did you try to appropriate it while the Baron d'Autrec possessed it? No, but the Baron takes his brother's house. 6 months later, we have the intervention of Antoinette Brillat and the first attempt. The diamond escapes you, and the sale is widely advertised to take place at the Drouot auction rooms. Will it be a free and open sale? Is the richest amateur sure to carry off the jewel? No. Just as the banker Hirschman is on the point of buying the ring, a lady sends him a letter of warning, and it is the Countess de Crozon, prepared and influenced by the same lady, who becomes the purchaser of the diamond. Will the ring disappear at once? No. You lack the opportunity. Therefore you must wait. At last, the Countess goes to her chateau. That is what you were waiting for. The ring disappears. To reappear again in the tooth powder of Herr Bleichen, remarked Lupin. Oh, such nonsense, exclaimed Sholmes, striking the table with his fist. "Don't tell me such a fairy tale. I am too old a fox to be led away by a false scent." "What do you mean?" "What do I mean?" said Sholmes, then paused a moment as if he wished to arrange his effect. At last he said, "The blue diamond that was found in the tooth powder was false. You kept the genuine stone." Arsene Lupin remained silent for a moment. Then, with his eyes fixed on the Englishman, he replied calmly, "You are impertinent, monsieur."
"Impertinent indeed,"
repeated Wilson, beaming with admiration. "Yes," said Lupin, "and yet, to do you credit, you have thrown a strong light on a very mysterious subject. Not a magistrate, not a special reporter, who has been engaged on this case, has come so near the truth. It is a marvellous display of intuition and logic." "Oh, a person has simply to use his brains," said Herlock Sholmes, nattered at the homage of the expert criminal.
"And so few have any brains to use,"
replied Lupin. "And now that the field of conjectures has been narrowed down, and the rubbish cleared away, well now, I have simply to discover why the 3 episodes were enacted at 25 Rue Clapeyron, 134 Avenue Henri Montin, and within the walls of the Château de Crezon, and my work will be finished. What remains will be child's play. Don't you think so?"
"Yes, I think you are right."
"In that case, Monsieur Lupin, am I wrong in saying that my business will be finished in 10 days?
"In 10 days you will know the whole truth,"
said Lupin. "And you will be arrested?"
"No."
"No?"
"In order that I may be arrested, there must occur such a series of improbable and unexpected misfortunes that I cannot admit the possibility of such an event."
"We have a saying in England that the unexpected always happens." They looked at each other for a moment calmly and fearlessly, without any display of bravado or malice. They met as equals in a contest of wit and skill, and this meeting was the formal crossing of swords, preliminary to the duel.
"Ah!"
exclaimed Lupin.
"At last I shall have an adversary worthy of the name, one whose defeat will be the proudest achievement in my career."
"Are you not afraid?" asked Wilson.
"Almost, Monsieur Wilson,"
replied Lupin, rising from his chair.
"And the proof is that I am about to make a hasty retreat. Then we will say 10 days, Monsieur Sholmes?"
"Yes, 10 days. This is Sunday. A week from next Wednesday, at 8 o'clock in the evening, it will be all over."
"And I shall be in prison?"
"No doubt of it."
"Ha! Not a pleasant outlook for a man who gets so much enjoyment out of life as I do. No cares, a lively interest in the affairs of the world, a justifiable contempt for the police, and the consoling sympathy of numerous friends and admirers. And now, behold, all that is about to be changed. It is the reverse side of the medal. After sunshine comes the rain. It is no longer a laughing matter. Adieu."
"Hurry up!" said Wilson, full of solicitude for a person in whom Herlock Sholmes had inspired so much respect.
"Do not lose a minute."
"Not a minute, Monsieur Wilson, but I wish to express my pleasure at having met you, and to tell you how much I envy the master in having such a valuable assistant as you seem to be." Then, after they had courteously saluted each other, like adversaries in a duel who entertain no feeling of malice, but are obliged to fight by force of circumstances, Lupin seized me by the arm and drew me outside.
"What do you think of it, dear boy? The strange events of this evening will form an interesting chapter in the memoirs you are now preparing for me."
He closed the door of the restaurant behind us, and after taking a few steps, he stopped and said,
"Do you smoke?"
"No, nor do you, it seems to me."
"You're right, I don't."
He lighted a cigarette with a wax match, which he shook several times in an effort to extinguish it. But he threw away the cigarette immediately, ran across the street, and joined 2 men who emerged from the shadows as if called by a signal. He conversed with them for a few minutes on the opposite sidewalk, and then returned to me.
"I beg your pardon, but I fear that cursed Sholmes is going to give me trouble. But I assure you, he is not yet through with Arsene Lupin. He will find out what kind of fuel I use to warm my blood. And now, au revoir. The genial Wilson is right. there is not a moment to lose.
Man, I don't know about you, but I am loving this. This is such, I don't know, it's very well written. I'm really enjoying this. And I hope you are as well. If you are, I'd love to hear from you. Get in touch. anotherworldaudiobooks@gmail.com is the easiest way. Or you can drop a comment on YouTube. I pretty much reply to every single comment that comes in through that. As well as on Spotify, you can reply there as well. And all the social medias too are on the website, anotherworldaudiobooks.com. Thank you guys for supporting the show. I really appreciate it. I love being able to bring these free audiobooks to you and to continue to do that. I'm just so grateful for every single patron who's been signing up. And like I said, once we get to that 12 mark, that is the mark where we are going to stop splitting chapters into multiple episodes, which I don't like doing. And I really am looking forward to the point where we don't have to do that, and then going from there. So thanks guys for supporting the show and spreading the word. That is the biggest thing. If you can't become a patron, the best way is just tell other people about the podcast, and I'll keep bringing you awesome audiobooks. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Look, Bumble knows you're exhausted by dating. All the, must not take yourself too seriously, and 6'1" since that matters, and what do I even say other than, hey? Well, that's why they're introducing an all-new Bumble, with exciting features to make compatibility easier, starting the chat better, and dating safer. They've changed, so you don't have to. Download the new Bumble now.